Hello and welcome to Your Health Moment podcast. I'm your host, Max Sturdivant, better known as Dr. Fitness. On this podcast, I want to give you the tools to start, continue, and never give up on your journey towards health. Now, whether you struggle with your weight, eating the right food, hydration, exercise, or even time management, you're in the right place, and I'm here for you. Now, let's dive right into this episode. This episode is brought to you by McGowan Spinal Rehabilitation Centers. Are you tired of living in pain and feeling on the edge? Introducing McGowan Spinal Rehabilitation Center, located in the heart of Jacksonville, Florida. The team at McGowan is dedicated to unraveling the mystery behind your neck pain, your back pain, your shoulder pain, by employing a wellness approach to diagnose the root causes of your pain and optimize conditions for normal function, as well as unlock a new level of vitality and vibrant health. Because you deserve to live pain-free and thrive in every aspect of your health. Visit McGowanSRC.com for more information. That's McGowanSRC.com. Hey, thank you for joining us for another episode of Your Health Moment. I'm your host, Dr. Fitness, and as always, we're going to discuss all things holistic health and wellness. So basically, no different than each other podcast that we've had, except today I have the pleasure of interviewing Tracy Herbert. And we're going to be discussing her 3 M's for living a longer, healthier, happy life. And I think I'm going to leave it there. And I'm going to introduce Tracy and have Tracy take us away from there. Tracy, can you give us a little more about yourself?
Absolutely. It's fantastic to be here today. I'm so thankful for this opportunity. And I was 17 years old, lying in a hospital bed, IV stuck in my veins. I'm scared out of my mind, not even sure what's going on. And the doctor walks in. And he puts his hands on his hips and he says, young lady, you're going to be dead in 20 years. You're going to die with horrible complications. You will have your legs amputated. You're going to go blind and you're never going to be able to have any children. And as he turned around and started kind of walking out of the room a little bit, he said, oh, and by the way, you got to take several shots every single day for the rest of your life because there's not a cure. And he walks out and I'm sitting there going, What did he just say? And that was my journey. Wow. Now, 47 years ago, on learning about life, learning about how to live longer, healthier life, despite whatever your age, setback, diagnosis, because we all struggle with so many things. And I was in the hospital for probably about 2 weeks, learning everything I could about what was called then juvenile diabetes. Now it's called type 1 diabetes, the kind that not so many people in the world have. But it is growing. The type 2 diabetes, which we're not going to get into all the diabetes, but type 2 is typically, not always, found in older people who are more lifestyle related, where type 1 diabetes, it's an autoimmune problem, and my pancreas quit producing insulin right then and there. And so without shots, wow. I die. And so I started learning everything I could while I was in the hospital, and everybody kept telling me the same thing. You're going to be dead in 20 years and you're going to die with horrible complications. And I'm sitting at 17, I'm still saying, excuse me, time out. This isn't right. And so when I got out of the hospital, I started going to a local medical school library, researching everything I could, not just about diabetes, but how can I, as a 17-year-old kid, start being healthier? And I was a varsity letter person in high school. I mean, I did it all. And I was an athlete my whole life, and I was always very healthy, so I thought, which I still was. I mean, still thin, nothing that I was expecting. And I went with my friends to a movie, my first outing, having diabetes, and I'm running out the door. My mom's yelling at me, Tracy, remember, you can't eat anything. Now, she didn't say it because we were poor, or she didn't say it because, she was trying to be mean. But back then I was having to be on a very restricted diet, and I had to learn the self-discipline that's actually has saved my life. And so all my friends were ordering the popcorn, the candy, the soft drinks, you know it. And I walked up to the concession stand clerk and I asked for a cup because back in the mid 70s, we didn't have bottled water. We didn't have diet soft drinks or anything. And I just wanted to get a cup of water out of the drinking fountain. And the cashier said, "Oh, no." And I said, "Oh, I'll be glad to pay for it." And she said, "No." All I was trying to do was fit in with my friends and have something. And I'm running out of the movie theater. I'm screaming. I'm crying. Why me? Why me? And all the way home, I started just bawling my eyes out, got into bed. And I said, "Tracy, you've got two choices. You can be bitter or you can be better. What are you going to choose?" And at that moment, 47 years later, I said, "I'm going to be better no matter what." And so I've lived pretty much my whole life saying, "Okay, Tracy, I have two choices. What am I going to do? Okay, I'm going to be better, or I'm going to choose this instead of this, or I'm going to do this exercise instead of Netflix binge watching all night long or something like that." And so I've spent my whole entire life figuring this out because without it, I knew I was going to die. And as I started reaching my mid 30s, by the way, I'd already had two healthy children by this time, but I started, everything the doctor said would never has happened to me. I'm not going to live a healthy life. Well, I am. I'm going to have horrible complications. I don't have any complications. I have two healthy kids, but most importantly, I have 6 grandkids, which is the best thing ever.
Wow.
Love my grandkids and my kids, but grandkids are very special. But I started feeling like I was so worn down in my 30s, and I thought maybe the doctors were right. That was the first time I started thinking, "Ooh, you know what? Maybe I was wrong." And I just had no energy. I mean, I was living my life with blood sugars like this, which most everybody does, even without diabetes. And I started thinking, okay, Tracy, get your researcher's hat back on, and get back to the libraries and start researching. And what I started realizing is I was beginning to eat because they started loosening up my dietary restrictions, having diabetes. And I started eating like the normal Western diet. I would have the hash browns and the bacon and eggs and the bread stuff for breakfast. And my blood sugars would go super high, just like everybody's, even without diabetes. And then it would crash. But when people's blood sugars crash, which everybody's does, that's when we become tired. That's also when we want to reach for something unhealthy. So when I started putting my researcher's hat on, thinking, wait a minute, Tracy, you want to start keeping your blood sugars more level, even though I was still taking insulin, I started thinking, what can I do? So I started with just some minor changes. And I started eating salads for breakfast and like leftover chicken. People thought I was crazy. But you know what? I started having level blood sugars and I started having more and more energy. And I've always been a long distance runner, long distance bicyclist and everything. But I started getting into more also doing those, but I started doing more meditation, more yoga, and started letting my body relax. Instead of always pushing to the next race, I started spending more time relaxing, and I started having more and more energy. And it was so funny because my doctor started asking me, "What are you doing?" First of all, because this is working amazingly well. And he was the one that encouraged me to write my first book because he said, "Tracy,
Oh, wow.
You've got to get this information out there." He was a brilliant physician. He is now retired because this is 47 years we're talking about. But he said, "You've got to get this information out there because people with or without diabetes need to know this." And to me, it was just, well, this is common sense. And he's like, "No, you're spending all your time researching." So I would take articles to him that I was researching, and he would say, "Wow, I never knew that." And he'd say, "Give me more research." So I'd send it to him. But the great thing about him was he would start showing other patients this. So then I started writing my book, and I thought, why am I still alive? When you start really when you write a book, especially, you start doing a lot of self-reflecting. But when you start reflecting on your prior life and what you've been doing, things start popping up. And I started thinking, okay, mindset is so important. So that became my first M, was having the right mindset, knowing I could take control. I can choose what I want to do. And so back to when I was 17, all my friends were eating pizza one day. And that's what you did as a high school senior. And I started thinking about, well, how can I keep myself from being so tempted? Because it was really hard to turn down pizza. And so I'd imagine,
Yeah, that'd be tough.
it's so horrible. And I'd start imagining rats using the restroom, running across the pizza. Pretty disturbing, but you know what? I didn't want that pizza anymore. And so that was all a mindset thing. So as I started developing from about the mid 30s now into my mid 60s, I started developing all these habits, and it all boils down to having the right mindsets. And then the second M is mouth. We have to learn to eat to live. We don't live to eat. So making simple choices. Okay, today, am I going to have a donut? Or would I possibly have something healthy and then maybe add an apple to it? If you want something sweet, grab some blueberries. I mean, there's simple swaps we can all do. And, so many people like the flavored coffees and the stuff with all the sugar and all the nastiness piled in there. But I drink a lot of green tea because green tea is known to reduce heart risk disease. And so I'm a big green drinker proponent. Don't put sugar in it, but just start drinking green tea, making one swap from eating or drinking a sugary coffee house drink to having, a true glass of a cup of really good organic, green tea. So mindset made me start thinking about my mouth. Then the mouth, that's when I started noticing the big difference in my energy, like I mentioned earlier. I started eating to live, not living to eat. And then the third M is move. And we have to get off our chairs and move more. And so when you have those three M's together, if you have the right mindset, more than likely you're going to eat healthy. But then you're going to also want to exercise. But let's say you have something totally, totally horrible to eat, which we all do. I'm not perfect. Nobody is. But you eat something that you shouldn't have eaten. More than likely, you're probably not going to want to go for a walk afterwards and get rid of some of that excess, horrible caloric intake and also all the added sugar and everything else. And so when I started reducing how much processed food I was eating and limiting to maybe 3 to 5% a week, sometimes 20, depending on what was going on with my family and things.
And when you say 3 to 5%, someone listening, how is there a way to help them understand that a little better?
Absolutely.
3 to 5%?
Absolutely.
It's like one meal or?
It can be. Everybody's different. But I also snacked twice a day because when I was diagnosed with diabetes, you were taught, okay, you have to eat 3 meals a day and you have to have these 2 snacks. What I started doing is reaching for like a bag of potato chips or some crackers for my snack instead of reaching for some celery or some carrots or something, just, fresh vegetables. So when I say 3 to 5%, sometimes for me, that's not a whole week of not having any processed snacks or no processed snacks. And then maybe 1 dinner or 2 lunches. Or sometimes now, I don't recommend this if you have diabetes, but most days of the week now, I do intermittent fasting. I don't do any type of eating for 16 to 18 hours. Now,
oh, that's fantastic.
I know. And now, again, I don't recommend this with anybody on insulin or lowering diabetes or lowering blood sugar medication. But I've been able to work because I've been doing a lot of things over my life. And I also wear technology that shows me what my blood sugars are and how much, insulin I need to take and things like that. So I don't eat typically breakfast. And when I do, I make it, we do a green protein shake where we put a lot of spinach and things like that, arugula, whatever we have in our refrigerator, and some protein powder, an avocado, and then a little bit of almond milk. And that's what we have for our shake. And so we're getting our healthy fats, we're getting all of our greens, and then we're getting some, almond milk, which doesn't have any sugar. The kind I buy doesn't have any sugar. But there's just reducing the sugar for me is critical. But now more and more research is showing to lower your risk of heart disease, to lower your risk of cancer, to lower your risk of arthritis, cut out the sugar. But we didn't know that back when I was diagnosed. So what I say, I typically do 3 to 5% a week of a little bit of cheating here and there. So it's going to be like maybe instead of having a sweet potato for a meal, I may have mashed potatoes instead. Because to me, that's a big cheat because it spikes my blood sugar quicker. And so things like that. But what I highly recommend, especially to people that are viewing and watching and listening, is, make one swap. Just make one swap today. Find something that you shouldn't be eating. And I use donuts a lot because so many people like donuts. So you drive by the donut shop every day to work. So go a different route so you're not tempted. And then one day just say, I don't want a donut. And then don't eat a donut. Find something else that gives you pleasure, but it's good for your body, not going to kill you like donuts will do. But then the next day, do the same thing and add one more thing. Because what happens when we start making too many changes at once, we're not going to stick with it. And so that's what's so important. But going back to why I had gotten back into a little bit more processed food a couple of years ago to celebrate my diagnosis of diabetes of 40 years, I rode my bicycle from San Francisco Golden Gate Bridge to New York City, the Brooklyn Bridge. And that's 3,527 miles. So I don't take things lightly. I go all in for everything. But then
how many miles did you ride each day?
Okay, that's a question everybody asks. It varied every day.
Every day. Oh, okay.
Because there's several reasons why. The first reason, and I'm going to use Wyoming a lot, and anytime I talk about my trip across the United States, because Wyoming, I rode on the interstate the whole time because there's no back roads to go across Wyoming. So I rode on Interstate 80, and while I was riding on there, every 76 miles, there's a rest stop. So that's where I would stop in Wyoming every 76 miles. It'd be like, go here and then go here, spend the night and then go here.
Neat.
And then what we did was,
oh, that's cool.
My husband and I bought an RV, a recreational vehicle. And then what I did was, because I had to have my insulin in controlled environment, so I couldn't just ride my bicycle and carry my insulin with me because I didn't want the insulin and the heat and the cool. It would have been horribly. It would have ruined. And so what we did was we bought an RV so we could keep my insulin in the refrigerator. And then I'd leave in the morning. I'd get on my bicycle and I'd say, I'm going for a bike ride. Just like we do, just like these small little steps I was talking about with food and everything else. I didn't leave the Golden Gate Bridge saying, I've got 3,527 miles. No, I'm going for a bike ride because I would have been overwhelmed. But every day, every inch, I got closer and closer. And that's what's so important about health. It's not all or nothing. You get on your bicycle and you go for a little ride, or you walk around the block and go for a ride. And I have to share the story if it's okay with you.
No, it absolutely is.
Because I met a lady in Sacramento, which was on, I can't remember. I think it was on day 2 or 3. I can't remember because I did a TV appearance just before I met her. And I was waiting for the light to turn green. And she just happened to say, oh, I wish I could ride my bike across the city. And I said, well, I'm going to New York City. But that gut feeling we all have, I knew I needed to get off my bike and talk to her. And so I got off my bike and I started talking to her. And she was the nicest, sweetest lady, probably in her mid-30s, but she was morbidly obese. And she was telling me, I can't even walk around the block to go home. I have to wait for my brother to pick me up. And I thought, oh, this poor lady. And I kept saying, can you do this? And everything was, I can't. And remember, 2 choices. Everything boils down to 2 choices. And everything I said, she said, I can't. I thought, okay, Tracy, come on, you're a health coach. What can you tell her? And I thought, okay, can you walk into your driveway? And just like that, for a split second, you could see a little bit of hope in her eyes. And she said, I think I can. I said, okay, walk into your driveway, rest, and walk back. And then do that the next day. Go a little further if you can. Go next door, go around the block. Every day do something a little bit further. By the time I got into New York City, I was riding in, I got a text message from her. And she said, I have to tell you, I just signed up for my first 5K walk. And this was a lady who couldn't even walk 2 or 3 houses to her house from the bus stop. And she said, not only did I realize I'm enjoying walking so much, but the weight is just falling off of me. And she says, I'm not changing anything I'm eating. And I thought, that's what it's about. So she was just taking small little steps, but she got to the point where she could sign up for her first 5K walk. And I always say, if you can do that, anybody can do it. I mean, if I could ride my bike as a, 58-year-old grandmother, you could ride your bike across the street, or you could walk across the street or go hiking or whatever. So find activities that people enjoy. And people always say, why did you ride your bike? Well, I love to ride bikes, And so I rode my bike. It started out as a celebration because, again, I choose to live, and I'm so much happier with the right kind of mindset that I thought, that'd be fun. Let's try that. So that's why I rode my bike. And then every day was a little different. I did a lot of TV appearances, but I've done TV before. When my books would come out, they'd have me come into the studios and be interviewed. And so some of these same people I was having a relationship with. So then when I was riding my bike, they'd say, okay, can you do this? Can you do this time and stuff like that? And then I also spoke at a lot of colleges, a lot of high schools, a lot of camps, children's camps. Even though it was the summertime, they still had like clubs and stuff in there. And so they wanted me to come and speak to them. A lot of the hospitals, doctors' offices, when they would find out about it, would have me come in, because a lot of doctors over the years have had me come into their office and do talks for people with diabetes and how to take control of your health, not just with my personal training experience and my health coaching experience, but just because I do it every day, because I have to, because if that, I'm going to die. And so every day was a totally different day on the bike ride. I ended up spending the last 4, 5, 6 days in New Jersey waiting to finish my ride in New York, because I finished on the Dr. Oz show. And because of their taping schedule, I had to kind of wait for them, which again, the purpose was to provide hope for people, because that's that's why I named my book, the second book, Ride for Hope, because without hope, we have nothing. And I didn't have hope at 17. And so I had to learn how to develop the hope that I have now and I've had throughout my life. But nobody gave me hope. And so it was so important for me to stop and talk to people. So it took me 3 months to finish. I could have done it easily in 6 weeks. But the goal was to sit there and encourage as many people as I could. And people encouraged me along the way, too. So it was the most incredible experience of my life. And as I'm getting closer and closer to my 50th anniversary of my diagnosis, everybody says, what are you going to do next? And I'm like, not sure yet, but you'll be the first to know. So I don't know what I'm going to do next. But anyway, I just love life and choose to enjoy it every step of the way. And again, that bike ride across the country, I was beginning to feel like I heard so many, there's horrible people in the world. You hear that all the time. And I'm like, no, I met some of the nice, I didn't have any problems along the route. People would stop, give me water. One man stopped with his wife and fixed a flat tire for me. And I'm like, I can fix it. And they're like, no. You just enjoy sitting down, having this glass of water, sit in our car, it's air conditioned. And, just things like that. I'd stop sometimes in a little town and people would just say, hey, can I buy you some lunch? Sure. I mean, so,
Oh, that's so nice.
It's
so you did get to experience a wonderful side of the country.
Exactly.
I mean, just the everyday person. And how gracious and wonderful people can be. It's in itself a wonderful gift.
It is. That to me was the best thing of the whole thing, was just getting to see. And then people say, still today, they'll say, oh, the world's going to, it's going apart, it's falling apart and everything. It's horrible. And I'm like, no, it's not. Get out there and be around people, quit watching all the horrible stuff that they talk about on TV and all the other stuff, and quit reading all that and go out and talk to people, because everybody's nice. Not everybody, but you know what I mean. The majority of us are really just trying to live life and do the best we can.
Well, clearly your ride provided a lot of hope for people. It was such a great mission.
Mm-hmm. If I can share.
What an inspiration.
Oh, thank you. If I can
please
share this. I did a lot of social media along the way. And anyway, there was a lot of people that started following the ride. And again, it's not about me, but it was about a mission to provide hope. And I got a message from a mom of the first week on my ride. At that time, she had a 6-year-old daughter who was living with type 1 diabetes for 2 years. So she got it at 4 years old. And her daughter started saying, my life is over. I'm just done with this. She was so depressed and she was so discouraged. And her mom started showing my videos to her. And she was like, and I don't believe this, but I'd always say, if this old lady can do it, what's stopping you from doing it? Because I want these kids to say, this old lady's doing it. I'm not old. I didn't feel like I was old. I mean, very few old people ride their bike across the country, but you know what I'm saying? But I want the kids to see it. So she'd say, oh, mommy. So her mom got a big map of the United States and she hung it on her bedroom wall. And then she cut out a picture of a bicycle and then cut a picture of my head and put the head on her bicycle and moved my little bicycle every day. And she started seeing it. And I said, that's why we named it Ride for Hope. I had a bunch of the kids give me names of what they think the book should be and the documentary should be. And that hands down, everybody said, Ride for Hope, because you're giving people hope.
Absolutely. Wow. And what do you see next? You've done so many incredible things. I mean, you brought awareness to diabetes in a way that, few people have. And you're so empathetic for people, of course, that are experiencing it because you've dealt with it yourself.
Mm-hmm.
What's next? I mean, you're 3 books under your belt.
Mm-hmm.
What's next?
Well, this is where I'm all over the place. I love life, and I love to encourage people. But as a few years ago, my husband and I have a lot of friends about our age. And one day we were all together having lunch or dinner or something together. And we were driving home because every one of our friends, every one of them was complaining. I'm old. I can't do this. I'm tired. I can't do this. This hurts. This hurts. And we were driving home and I said, I don't want to be that way. And my husband's like, I don't either. So now I'm really shifting towards encouraging people my age and older, baby boomers, that they can live a healthy life. It doesn't matter. If you want to spend the rest of your life on a rocking chair, great, do it. But if you don't, these are some of the things you can do. And it's so simple. And so I'm shifting gears a little bit. Kids are always going to be my joy. But I also, on the other end of the world, the spectrum, we have the young kids, but then we have the older people that are giving up on life. And I'm like, don't give up. Don't give up. And there's a really interesting research paper that they did. I believe it was in the 90s. I should have had that. I'm going to give you the information anyway, because it's so fascinating. It was only 10. Okay. It was only 10 people in the nursing home. So it's really not even a certified study. But it's so impactful when you hear the story. They took 10 people and all they did was give them a few weights, just small little light weights for their legs and their arms. And they were teaching them some of their things to do. They were all bedridden. Every one of them was bedridden. By the time this study ended, it was only 3 months long. So it wasn't a very long study, but 3 months, if old people, 90 and older, I didn't say 90 and older, 90 and older in a nursing home, in a bed, can't get out, can make changes than anybody can. But 6 out of the 10 were able to walk to the dining room and have a meal with their friends. And social isolation is critical for everybody. That's not good for our mental well-being at all. And then 2 were able to get and do their wheelchair still, but they could go to the dining hall. So at least they weren't eating in their rooms. And then the other 2 stayed in their rooms. They couldn't get out still. But the point is that, the majority of the people, 8 out of 10, were able to go to the dining hall and eat a meal with their friends instead of being stuck in their room. And so at 90 and older, if they can do it, same thing. If this old lady could ride her bike across the United States, anybody can make a change. You just got to figure out what you want to do. That's what it's about, is finding out what you want to accomplish and then do it. Make ways, make steps. You can do it.
Now, you've been coaching people for a long time.
Yeah.
So when you find someone that's having a hard time, making that commitment to themselves to move or to do things, how have you found is the best way to support them? Sometimes,
not sometimes. For me, it's all the time. You have to keep digging and asking the questions. The most important thing is, why do you want to make the change? People don't call me just because they want to do something. They don't know what they're calling me for or reaching out to me. They don't physically make up a phone and call me. But, they don't know why. They know they need to do something. Or maybe their doctor told them they need to do something. Or maybe their spouse or friends or kids or family or whomever. But the point is, if a doctor or a spouse or a friend tells you you need to make those changes, you're probably not going to be successful. So I start really digging deep and asking those questions. And I keep saying, why? Why? Sometimes it's 20 times. Why do you want that? And then eventually it finally boils down to their real reason for wanting to work with me and get healthy. Because if you just say, I want to lose weight for a class reunion or something, or I've got a vacation coming up, I don't work with those kind of people because that's not healthy and they're not going to make the change forever. This is not about weight loss. It's not about getting strong. It all is important, but the most important thing is living the rest of your life healthy. Because again, I'm not going to spend the rest of my life on a rocking chair. I'm not going to do it. That's not what I want to do. And most people don't. That's why I use the rocking chair.
I can't imagine. I can't imagine you in a rocking chair, actually. Well, your husband must be so wonderful to share in like some of these missions with
Yes.
you, like being in a motorhome and going across the country. Is he in health and wellness as well?
No, but he is by osmosis. He is, but no, he's not. But he and I actually wrote my third book together, which is very interesting.
Wow.
Because he's always given me permission to share the story. I don't typically tell things to people unless I get their permission. But about 20 years ago, he was on 3 different medications. He was 40 pounds overweight, and I would, simply, subliminally say, you may want to try this, but then you don't want to tell your spouse that. And so he just gradually started making some changes, and then started riding. The first time we rode bikes together, he couldn't even ride a full mile. And now he's riding 25, 30 miles at a time with me. But he's always making the changes himself. But then he's beginning to ask questions. But the nice thing is, for 20 years, he's been off all medication. He's almost 70. I mean, he's in his late 60s. I'm in my mid 60s. But the thing is, he's kept off his medication and he's kept off the weight. And he's like, this is so simple. Why didn't I pick this up earlier? I'm like, it was your choice. Again, you got to know your why. But as his knees started getting achy and, his hips started bothering him and things like that, he knew, I don't want to spend the rest of my life, sitting on a rocking chair. We use that example because we back to the bottom of the Grand Canyon. We just completed that trip again a couple of months ago, where we carry all of our clothes, all of our food. We hike to the very bottom of the Grand Canyon, spend a couple of nights, and we hike back out. But the first time my husband and I ever did that, we did that in our 40s the first time. And we met a couple at the bottom who was 84 and 86. And they were the greatest couple in the world. So we use them as our role model. So when we start feeling like, oh, gosh, my back hurts today, I'm not going to go for a run or a walk. Oh, no, I am. Remember our 84 and 86-year-old friends. And so he's really cool. He's just changed from this side all the way over here. And now he's as healthy as I am. And what's so funny is our kids, they're always like, we can't keep up with y'all. And our grandkids are always like, okay, we know if Papa and Mimi are involved, we're going to do something crazy and active.
Oh, that's fantastic. Mm-hmm. I mean, so you see your desire for health just kind of continuing to go through generation and generation. Mm-hmm. Yep. It's having an impact on your grandchildren even.
Yes. And if we can reach the kids, you know this, I mean, you're an expert, but if we can reach the kids, then they have a much better outlook on life for their health than what they do if they don't. And what's so sad is so many children now are being diagnosed with type 2 diabetes, which used to be called adult onset. It's because so much time is spent in front of the TV, computers, and all that. And so when we start with the kids, we eventually will get up there to the parents, and then from the parents, then the grandparents. And it's a generational thing. It can either be a curse or a blessing. And what is it going to be?
Well, you know what? That sounds like a really good place to leave this. And we're going to leave it at being a blessing. It's a blessing to be able to share the gifts of good health and things that everyone can do, no matter where you are on that health continuum, to move in a direction to being more healthy. So Tracy Herbert, I'd like to thank you for joining me today. And I want to thank the listeners for tuning in to another episode of Your Health Moment. I look forward to talking to you again next week. Take care and goodbye for now. Tracy, thank you so much.
Oh, thanks. It's been a blessing.
That was fantastic. Oh my God, you are amazing.
Well, every day's a gift. When you have an extra day of life, you just, what am I going to do today to help somebody else, Because, in the fitness industry, if we don't do it, nobody else is. If we don't encourage people, nobody's going to do it.
It's so true. Mm-hmm. And being there for people when they're ready.
Yes.
Because sometimes I just have to wait for someone to be ready for the support, because you can, what's that expression? You can bring a horse to water, but you cannot make them drink.
That's exactly right.
But being able to be present and just to be on platforms like you're on and being out there and doing things to bring awareness, it's a real gift. And this has been an honor for me to have the opportunity to speak with you today. Thank you for listening to this episode of Your Health Moment podcast. If you enjoyed what you've heard, you can visit our website, yourhealthmoment.com, for past episodes, show notes, and all the resources that we mentioned on the show. Feel free to connect with me on social media too. Send me a DM and let me know what your thoughts are about the episodes that you've been listening to. And don't be shy about requesting any other show topics that you might like to explore.